Prepare yourself for an adventure like no other. Every breathtaking path and trail in this fourth Walt Disney World theme park calls you to explore.
Disney's Animal Kingdom, it's many, many things, but remember it's not a zoo!
WDW Radio, your information station.
Hello, my friend, and welcome to the WDW Radio Show, your guide to the Disney parks, experiences, movies, and more. I am your host, Lou Mongello, and this is show number 800. Thank you, thank you, thank you. This would never have happened if it wasn't for your friendship and love and support and listening. I appreciate you more than I am able to express here on the show. And to celebrate our 800th episode of WDW Radio, this week, while I originally had a show planned to mark this milestone number with you, instead, I have something and someone very special to share with you instead. I am incredibly honored and privileged to bring you my conversation with former Walt Disney Imagineer and newly inducted Disney Legend Joe Rohde. You know him from so many incredible projects at Disney, and we sat down earlier this week to talk about the convergence of art, wildlife, and culture, a meaningful project that you can help with, and an opportunity to see Joe in person next month. And if you're wondering why is this episode not 9 hours long, Lou, because there's so many questions you can and should ask Joe Rohde. I agree with you 100%. Hopefully I can have Joe on the show again in the future. And I would love to know from you, what would be the one question you would ask Joe Rohde if you had the opportunity to? Please let me know your thoughts about this episode. The answer to that question over in the clubhouse at wdwradio.com/clubhouse. Call the voicemail at 407-900-9391. That's 407-900-WDW1. Share your story on the show, your question for Joe on the show, or in anticipation of our celebration of 800 episodes, let me know your favorite episode, interview, something maybe that you learned on the show. Again, I'll post that question in the clubhouse as well. And because I want the focus to be solely on Joe, his mission, his message, and the event coming up in October, I'm going to hold off on this week's trivia question until next week. But in the meantime, don't forget that the best way to stay connected and not miss a thing is to sign up for my free weekly email newsletter delivered right to your inbox with news, updates, special events, exclusive content, and contests, and more. And when you do, you'll get a free copy of my 102 Things to Do at Least Once in Walt Disney World book. You can sign up right at WDWRadio.com. Don't forget to connect with me on social. I am at Lou Mongello on Instagram, Facebook, and LinkedIn. And please visit LouMongello.com if you're looking for a speaker for your business, conference, or event, or if you're a creator, entrepreneur, or solopreneur looking to take your business, brand, or idea to the next level. And thank you once again for being here, for spending and sharing your time with me, whether this is the very first episode of the show you've ever listened to, or you've listened to all 800. None of this, including the opportunity to speak with Joe Rohde this week, happens without you. I love you. I appreciate you. And if you like what you hear, please share the show and tell a friend. So sit back, relax, and enjoy this very special 800th episode of the WDW Radio Show.
I've always wanted to go to Mongolia. Nomads, camels, huge open country. But I never really imagined that I would be following the fresh tracks of a snow leopard, a slippery, frozen mile from my Kazakh guide, my horse, my survival gear, and my only ticket home.
It is a rare opportunity and privilege to be joined by someone who needs no introduction. His work at and with Walt Disney Imagineering on projects that include but are not limited to Disney's Animal Kingdom, Pandora, the World of Avatar, Aulani, Epcot, The Adventures Club, Guardians of the Galaxy, Mission Breakout, and most recently Lookout Key at Lighthouse Point, among countless others. For over nearly 4 decades, have made him a true and newly inducted Disney legend. But beyond being known for his groundbreaking work in and for the parks and his trademark earring, through his international work on worldwide conservation, he's not only raising global awareness, but he's also driving meaningful change, inspiring communities and individuals to take action in preserving endangered species, ecosystems, and cultural heritage. I am, of course, talking about none other than Disney legend Joe Rohde. And Joe, it is my pleasure and honor to welcome you to the show.
Oh, it's great to be here. Thank you very much.
I have to start off by saying I have incredible respect for you and am an admirer of your truly influential work with Disney. You are a remarkable storyteller that creates and defines what immersive experiences that are also rooted in your incredible respect for cultural authenticity are. So first and foremost, out of the gate, thank you for that. And while I have no less than 1,000 questions about your time at Disney, maybe we can save that for another day. I've also been fascinated by your passion and your efforts in not just the fictional placemaking, but your real world efforts in wildlife conservation, which I first learned about in a place that is rooted in that, in Disney's Animal Kingdom. Could you just quickly talk about what really has been lifelong efforts from you to not just raise awareness, but to truly make a difference and, use your gifts to do real good in the world?
Yeah, I mean, it got a big bump up, I think, with Animal Kingdom, because just in order to ever do Animal Kingdom, we were going to have to engage with wildlife conservation people, animal rights people, cultural representatives. There was no way to do the project unless you did this. And so this opened up a network of people that I'm sure there's many creative people, many artists, designers who would love to be engaged in this way, but they don't have the network. It would be hard for them to enter that network because they're not working in that idiom. But suddenly here we were right in the middle of it. And so I suddenly had all these people I could call, all these people I could learn from, this whole network. So of course, it was clear that Animal Kingdom itself and the Disney Conservation Fund would be engaged in this. But it also made me aware that I could do stuff, right? Personally. And I really do believe this thing. I think we have this inhibited response to these calls because we think, well, I'm not Jane Goodall. I can't go live in the forest. I'm not a scientist. I'm not a biologist. I'm not a politician. But that's not really the way these things work. The way they work best is for you to be who you already are and do some kind of thing you already do, but to do it with a kind of focus, a kind of energy, a kind of direction. And that was, I guess, for me, the big epiphany that I could be an artist and do art things and still have a niche, have a place in this world of wildlife conservation. So I've done a series of things, very simplistic things sometimes, like for years I did the annual fundraising poster for the Disney Conservation Fund as a series of paintings. And then, of course, as time has gone on, these more complicated things, these conservation-related expeditions, like the one that we're fundraising for right now.
Right, because you are not just a member of the fictional Society of Explorers and Adventurers. You are a real member of the Explorers Club, which has been part of you traveling around the world to these remote locations like Nepal, like Africa. My God, Joe, I would love to just look at your passport stamps one day, like including the remote mountains of Western Mongolia, not on a sightseeing tour, but you're there for a month on horseback and camelback working to help the snow leopards. You're like, I was thinking about this morning. You're like a real life Indiana Jones. Like you really are. Like you're not seeking out museum treasures and artifacts, but more importantly, you're making a tangible difference by protecting this world and ensuring that future generations can witness the same type of beauty.
I'm lucky in that some of the areas in which I am profoundly interested, I really always wanted to go to Mongolia. I love being in the Himalayas. I'm fascinated by the pre-Columbian cultures of Central America. So I happen to be personally interested in areas of the world that also have these environmental crises and wildlife crises. So it's not entirely a selfless enterprise. I want to go to these places, right? But I don't like to go to places in a very passive kind of way. I want to be engaged. I want to do something. And so when I wanted to go to Mongolia, but I want to go there and do something. And so I got on the phone to this network of wildlife conservation people. And I found Rodney Jackson, who's a preeminent snow leopard a conservation leader. And I asked him if there was something I could do to help. And that led to this month-long expedition in Mongolia, which is the subject of the film, which is part of what we'll be showing at UCF. Traveling and painting in the outback. I mean, literally, carrying paintings on the backs of camels to raise money and to raise awareness for snow leopard conservation efforts in that part of the world. And we're doing, again, this next one will also be a snow leopard related expedition.
Yeah, I saw a few clips from the film, and I was fascinated by the fact that you were creating art in these just like empty places in the middle of quote unquote nowhere. But you talked about wanting to go to Mongolia, and I'm just sort of fascinated with how it comes to be that you start to pick out these places. But you've done so much. Like, why snow leopards, right? This is an animal that most of us will never see in real life. So how did this true life adventure of yours come to be?
So there's a couple things there. Snow leopards do happen to live in a part of the world that I'm fascinated by. And so in a sense, it's painless for me to do these things because I love this part of the world. They're a fantastic and very weird animal, such a weird, interesting animal. And then I also have this thing, in a sense, it's kind of a low-hanging fruit thing of like, look, these animals live in rocky nothingness. We surely we should be able to save and preserve these animals. It's not like they're in your, this, if we can't do this, what are we talking about, right? So there's also that aspect to it. They're such an interesting animal. Their adaptations are very peculiar. They're physically, when you see one, I have seen a snow leopard in the wild, and they look straight at you. A very strange face because they have a weirdly big forehead for a cat because of all these sinuses for warming air. And so they have this kind of funky werewolf look when they look at you like, that's a weird thing. Anyway, everything about them is great. And so it's easy for me to make this choice. It's easy for me to choose to advocate for snow leopards. And I do think it's this thing of like, you start with steps, you don't have to start with the hardest and most difficult and most impossible thing you're ever going to try to do and then tell yourself it can't be done because it's hard. You can start with something that you think you can do, right? And then roll with that as you go into more challenging enterprises.
I love that just as a personal takeaway for people who, how do I make a difference? How do I start to do adventure travel? And I also can understand the fascination with the snow leopards. One, because wanting to help in terms of the awareness and conservation, because there are fewer than 10,000. They are declining by 10% in 2040. But I have to imagine, Joe, too, there are inherent challenges, not just because of where they live, but they are very elusive creatures, right? They're the ghosts of the mountains. And as I was doing, research, preparing for this morning's conversation, I too became fascinated by a lot of their unique characteristics, like that they don't roar and how adaptable they are to their environment. And even the way that the paws, the pads of their feet are almost more like snowshoes than a traditional, house cat. Talk about the opportunities and sort of the challenges in selecting this animal that is very sort of isolated.
So I'm working, as you know, with several other scientists and researchers in this enterprise. This is not me alone. And one of these people, Dr. Natalie Schmidt, is working on DNA analysis because, frankly, you almost never see these animals themselves. You see evidence of the animal. And so to get population counts, to understand the numbers of animals, to understand their range, where are they, what are they eating, you're almost dealing much more with evidence of a snow leopard than the snow leopard itself. The one snow leopard that I saw by accident, very near the research area that we're going to be going to. But in a month in Mongolia, we tracked snow leopard footprints through the snow. Never saw a snow leopard. They could have been a snow leopard sitting 15 feet away from me.
I saw the clip where you're like, there's probably one right behind me right now. I just don't see it. Yeah.
I mean, the one that I did see, I was with my family. We were in Nepal. We were in a pretty popular trekking area of Nepal at the edge of the Annapurnas. We're all hiking. And my elder son, who at the time's probably about 14, he goes, "Hey, Dad, what's that cat?" And I go, "Where?" He goes, "Dad, it's right there." I go, "Where?" He goes, "Dad, it's right there." And I look across this little canyon of like 150 feet away, and there is a snow leopard right there, walking along completely exposed against this gravel slope. No other possible thing that it is. That is a snow leopard. Walking along. And as soon as the shadow of the snow leopard lined up with its own body, so you couldn't see the shadow, it completely disappeared. Like Predator. Like, it's gone. So I know I'm looking at it. There's nothing to hide behind. There's no rock. There's no bush. I'm looking at this animal. I cannot see it. And then it appears again as soon as the shadow appears, like another 50 feet over. Oh, it's over here now. Unbelievable camouflage, like magic camouflage. Really spectacular.
Yeah, that's incredible. Because when you do this, right, so the Leopard in the Land was recorded, like you said, in Mongolia in 2015. You're not out there with a crew of 20 cameras and videographers and drones and things like that. It's you and other guides and, one cameraman in these, very large scale open air landscapes to try and not just find these cats, but raise awareness and raise money. Talk about some of the challenges in making it, both from the ideation to getting people to come on board with you to do it, to production and getting it distributed even.
Yeah, that's an interesting thing because we had no intention of making a film. All I wanted to do was do these paintings and raise money for snow leopard conservation. And this was in the early days of things, that kind of early Instagram, internet, not internet, but social media outreachy stuff. So I had all these friends in media and they're like, "Well, are you going to videotape it? Are you going to document it?" And I'm just going to do the paintings. They're like, "Well, if you don't document it, if you don't video it, it's like it never happened." Bless it. All right, let me figure that out. So eventually this friend of mine, Jim McKeechin, who is a mountaineer, he's a writer, he's a producer, he's a filmmaker. So he's very capable. And he had been involved for many years with a lot of our Animal Kingdom expeditions as the B-roll cameraman, right? And so I was able to get him onto the trip. And what we thought we were going to do is shoot little clips that would go on YouTube as little fundraiser clips. So we did not even know we were making a movie when we were doing it, or we might have had a crew. But you kind of don't want a crew because the more people you have, the less likely you're going to see any animals, or you just create too much impact. And we were trying to be in pretty quiet, remote places. So he shot all this stuff and then came home and then began looking at it, to be able to, and he's like, I have 15 minutes of linear narrative here if we voice it like this. And then, a week later, he's like, "I've got like 40 minutes of linear narrative. And finally, he's like, "I think I've got a whole film. As long as we narrate it and bring the linkage together between these segments, we have a film." And so we put the film together. We put it in some film festivals. The proceeds would go to the Snow Leopard Foundation at that time. Now I'm working with a different foundation, the Pangjay Foundation, which does specific snow leopard related community work in these villages in the Himalayas. So this thing that we're doing forward is a whole other chapter in how it's also a more sophisticated utilization of art than the movie. It's a different thing that we're doing. But the movie, in a way, was kind of an accident. And then it's proven to be a very useful tool in getting people to understand, some of the crises and some of the spirit of what it means to do this.
I love the opportunity in the accident that was there, because at the time, Joe, it literally was uncharted territory. I don't just mean literally the physical environment, having not really been explored by humans, but I think, and one of the other things I sort of take away from a lot of what you do, and specifically the film, is the way you travel, and that it's sort of inspirational travel, not just from a conservation perspective, but you talk about sort of, not over planning and leaving room for the unexpected, and, just sort of as the moment hits you, deciding to sketch out in the environment. What was, when you got to Mongolia, like, what is the reception from the local people? And talk about the importance of creating relationships when you do a project like this.
So this is also really interesting. There's several aspects to this, and one of the reasons I've decided to make art such a fundamental part of the conservation effort, being an artist changes very much the kind of relationship you have when you end up in these places, because people react to artists in a very different way, especially an art that you can make in front of people, that is public, that people can see happening. It changes the relationship dynamic between you and people, because they become really involved. So it's a way that people become involved. They get really into it, right? So that's interesting. And
there's no language barrier, right? There's no language barrier.
Yeah, it's visual, right? And so it's visual, and it's able to say things that are very difficult to say with words. So that's really interesting, and it helps pull people in. And of course, it argues in a different kind of way because it's visual, not verbal. So there's that aspect of it. And then I like, it's not, obviously we think of these places as untraveled, but there's indigenous people live out here. All these people live in this area. They live with these snow leopards. And that's the whole challenge, is how can they live with the snow leopards? What's interesting is how interested the people are in finding a way to live with the snow leopards, rather than simply, I'm going to solve every single problem I have, by killing this animal. They really would love to find solutions. And so that's helpful as well, because you're not fighting a complete uphill battle. Now, Mongolia, because it's so gigantic, it's a little easier to lay out spatial divisions, gradations of space, where, fully protected snow leopard area, partially legally protected. Here's an area where if snow leopards are preying on your animals, it's okay to, kill snow leopards. There's a whole gradation, because you have unbelievably huge. If you take Mongolia and lift it up off a globe and drop it in the Western United States, it's a lot of the Western United States. It's big. The Himalayas is very different. It's very folded in on itself. It's like if you took a great big piece of aluminum foil that was Mongolia and crinkled it up into a little ball, So there's all these little folds and little valleys and little tiny places that, even though the Himalayas are big mountains, the spaces are intimate. They're valleys and canyons and very contained spaces. And so the conflict is more acute and then more focused, because you don't have these giant ranges. You have all these spaces everywhere. So it's a different kind of solution you're looking for people. That's probably more based on technologically helping with corrals and ways of protecting herd animals. Whereas in Mongolia, you have space as an advantage. So all of that is, and that's not just what I'm doing. This is the other people. What I'm doing is a very particular thing of using the art to not. This is important. I'm not really creating. I started doing this. This is an evolutionary thing of how this art works. But basically, at this point, I offer my services as an artist to the local community, by which, through my being a painter, they are able to express themselves. So I'm actually almost like an artist for hire at this point. We're going to show up, we're going to create a painting, but I have no idea what this painting is going to be. The painting will actually be a communal painting that we all create together. And the experience of working at Imagineering, where everything we do is communal, everything we do is collaborative, is actually rather unique for an artist, right? To be an artist who is really, really used to the idea that your name, your identity, you're not the owner of this thing, gives me an interesting advantage in being able to collaborate in this way. So this will be more similar in spirit to the project I did in the Arctic last summer, where I was up in the high Arctic with these Inuit narwhal hunters with another Explorers Club scientist working on a big, huge painting that, again, was really their ability to put together and express their ideas about the world of nature, their place in the world of nature, the culture, the conflict between the modern world and its imposition, climate and its changes, and the world of the narwhal. And that was spectacular, but that's the real key to what we're now doing.
It's, as I hear you talk about this, Joe, and I see your work and I saw clips from the film, I have to imagine from a personal, we talk about life-changing experiences, right? When metaphorically, there's like these are truly life-changing experiences where you get to go, the things you get to see, the things you get to learn, the relationships you make. But I think more importantly too, not just on being able to impact and influence other people in a positive way, but just for you personally, like these, I have to imagine they are truly life-changing for you in a lot of different ways.
They are, they are. You have things. You really are in a place where everything matters. There's no safety net, and there's no, there's just pure human relationship. In a way, you're sort of beyond the reach of law in a way, because you're so far away from everything. You're just where people are, where nature is. Stuff can happen. And so it makes you, so why is it life-changing? Your life can be life-changing anywhere as long as you pay attention to it, right? But it's very difficult to not pay attention when you're in these places that are so present for you. They're right on top of you, so of course you experience it more richly. So of course you remember it more clearly. So of course it becomes an important part of your life because it's so unlike the day-to-day life that you have. But in fact, if we had the discipline to pay attention to the day-to-day life, it's just as present, it's just as challenging. And you don't have to go to Mongolia to have a life-changing experience. It's actually the lazy way of getting a life-changing experience.
Right, because you do see these daily hardships and lifestyle challenges that these people feel every single day. And there's angry camels and blizzards and the Mongolian winter. And you're like, this is great. Let's do it again. So you are going in May. You're going back to the snow leopards. This time you're going to Nepal, correct?
That is correct, yes. Yeah, we're going to go to a region in the Annapurna area, a couple different areas, a rather large town called Manang, and another more of a village, high altitude, about 13,000 feet, called Naru. And we're going to spend time in both, working with these local communities, both of which are already involved with snow leopard conservation. And Natalie Schmidt, the scientist, has been in the region. I don't think she's been to both of these villages either. So for all of us, it's kind of a new adventure. And then the other researcher, Beth Allgood, is working on a sort of sociological sampling system to allow methods for local and indigenous people to define for themselves what prosperity and a good life and a rightful end would be, so that conservation programs, instead of sort of offering benefits that don't have meaning to the local people, can actually be tailored to what local people really value, which might be things we don't think about at all, right? So it's super interesting, the combination of skills coming together, not just an artist, but an artist working with scientists who value the contribution of the immaterial quality of art. I think it's going to be super interesting.
I love the fact that these trips have become, and I think always were, this marriage of collaboration, like you said, of art and science and culture that, blends all of these different fields of study. And that's why you are having this event at University of Central Florida on Saturday, October 5th, where you're raising funds to help support the partners and fellow members of the Explorers Club. Talk a little bit about the UCF event and the film. And
so we did an event in California. People really, really enjoyed it. And I thought we could do one on the East Coast because there's all kinds of people who they're not going to get on an airplane and fly to California. That's not happening, right? So the other concentration of people who might be interested are going to be those people around Orlando who know Animal Kingdom, who know that kind of stuff, right? There's people. Thought, okay, we'll go there. We'll do the same thing. It's all the money goes straight to the effort to make sure that everybody has the funds to supplies, porters, the permit fees. There's a lot to do this. It's a real expedition. So we'll show the film, the Mongolian film. I will then do another presentation sort of explaining the evolution of this theory of art and science and how it starts within Animal Kingdom and expands into the Explorers Club and what it is. And we'll take question and answer and spend time with people to make sure that they understand kind of what we're all doing. And then, of course, all these people who are contributing this money essentially then are like partners in this expedition. Mm-hmm. It can't happen without the money. And the scientists, while they can apply for grants, the grant process is extremely time consuming. And the amount of money that you get per grant is not necessarily commensurate with what it takes to do a month-long expedition. That's a big deal. So I'm sort of trying to help out because I know that I have this capacity to speak, to be entertaining, to put on a show that's good enough that people might want to see it, right? And so it really is kind of just a fundraising show to get the money together so that we know, because we got to know by October. We have the money to do the exhibition, or we're going to have to postpone it. But I don't want to keep postponing it because Papa's getting old. I got to do this.
And so tickets are $100 per person, but it's rewarding to know, Joe, that they are going to the foundation to support this trip, to support the conservation, that it is going to a good cause, that they do get to spend, an afternoon with Joe Rohde, which, that alone is worth the price of admission. And everybody also gets a takeaway, right? Everybody gets a signed art print from you as well.
So there's a print. It's about a 5x7, not a huge print, but it's a print that is significant within the context of the film from the trip to Mongolia. They're all hand signed by me for real, not a printed signature. Like I sat there and signed them. I've signed like 600 of these things, So you will have that, a thing to take away, and significant, as you'll see when you see the film, a significant image that means something in the context of all this storytelling.
And again, Joe, there's so many more questions I have even just about this, but your adventures aren't just, and I love the fact that you take us along with you on social and through these events and through the films, but they're not just transformative, but I think that they are inspiring to a lot of people as well, because not only are you making a real difference, but it shows how exploration can fuel conservation and fuel creativity. When people see the film, when the people see what you do in this context, what is that you want people to take away from it? What do you want people to do? How can people help from home? For example, if they can't come to an event like this?
I really think I sort of touched on this earlier. The notion of slight changes, personal changes, things that you feel like you have command over, doing these things. You don't need to say snow leopards. You can say butterflies in your own yard. There's 1,000 things we can do that are micro changes in our behavior. Remember, for me, I'm a designer. I do these kind of trips anyway. I paint anyway. I travel anyway. For me, this is a micro change. It's a knob adjustment of the thing that I'm going to do anyway, right? So for people out there, it's the same thing. There's these little changes you can make, little decisions you can make, that because we who are Americans are at the top of a gigantic consumer pyramid of energy and material. When we make little changes, they have huge impact in the world because we're at the top of this giant pyramid. So that's really, I think, one of the main messages here is that we are kind of the controlling function here in the destiny of nature. And so our decisions matter.
Yeah, there is you mentioned butterflies. There is sort of a butterfly effect to the things that we do. All right, last question I have for you. You talked about, getting older. And when we think about that, words like legacy start creeping into our thoughts. And you have left incredible, indelible, permanent footprints in places like the Disney parks, resorts, and certainly what you're doing with conservation and to help the planet and its people and the animals. What do you want your legacy to be? How do you want people to sort of remember you, years from now?
Well, I think your best legacy is people. People who have been affected, people who have been changed, people who are inspired. So I think people having faith in their own capability is probably the best legacy you could leave behind. The people. The stuff could come and go. I mean, every single thing I built could be torn down and replaced by something else. It's all commercial, right? I mean, that literally could happen. But the people won't go away. The people who have been affected, the people who have been inspired, the people who have made decisions because of it, that doesn't go away. So to me, the legacy is the actual people who are touched by or inspired by or made decisions based on anything that they came into contact, because that goes on and is passed on and continues.
That is it is the beautiful, perfect answer that I almost expected. And like I said, Joe, I still have those 1,000 questions about Disney. So maybe we can chat about that another day. I will put a link in the show notes at WDWRadio.com to where people can buy tickets to the Saturday, October 5th event at the University of Central Florida. I'll also link to your Instagram. It's at sure. Joe Rohde, where you are, again, even in those sort of micro-sized pieces of content. Some of them are so beautiful and so impactful. You are an amazing person to follow and a fascinating storyteller on social as well. Thank you for what you've done at Disney. Thank you for what you are doing for the snow leopards and the planet. Thank you for your time today. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.